Today guys, I'm going to share with you all of the secrets that I use to reduce the amount of memory that my builds take up. Before you can think about starting to save memory, you need to understand what memory is and how it's calculated. The way that memory is calculated is very simple. It's split up into two sections. So the first section of how memory is calculated is the amount of memory that a prop takes up when you first spawn it. So right now we're set on 5,234 memory. So now I throw in a helicopter into the game and the memory is at 6,415. Which means that the first spawn of this helicopter actually costs 1,181 memory. The second section for how memory is calculated is how many copies of this object that you have. Every time that you make a copy of a prop in Fortnite Creative, it will only cost 3 or 4 memory depending on the prop to make a copy of it. So if I copy this helicopter which costs 1,181 memory, the second helicopter will only cost 4 memory. As you can see, the memory went from 6,415 with one helicopter to 6,419 with 2 helicopters. So the second helicopter only cost 4 memory. This follows for every single copy that you make of this prop. As you can see, it's only gone to 6,428 with 4 helicopters. So the amount of memory that a prop takes up is first dependent on whether or not it's the first spawn of an object, in which case that object will cost a lot of memory to spawn in, and then also how many copies of this prop that you have in your level. Okay guys, so now that you have a basic understanding of how memory is calculated in Fortnite, let's move on to some of the tips that I use to reduce memory in my levels. So as you can see, I've built this absolutely massive city for the block, and it's only taking up 30,000 memory. The first tip that I can give to you is avoid using a prop once. As you just saw, spawning in a prop for the first time takes up a lot of memory. So if you're only going to use that prop once in the level, then you're using up a lot of memory for no reason. As you can see, the crane prop would be quite expensive, and if I was to only use this once throughout the entire build, then that would have been a huge chunk of my memory taken up. The second tip that I use to reduce the memory that I use on my maps is to avoid using a large range of props and to cut down on the variety of props that you're using. You should avoid using 2 similar props and just stick to using one of the props. That's because, like I said before, the first spawn of an object takes up a lot of memory. So if you're using 2 unique props in your level, then you're going to be hit with that expensive first prop spawn twice. If you can cut out the second prop because it's not necessary or it really doesn't add to the level, then you can save on that expensive first prop memory spawn. The third way that I avoid running into memory issues is to place the prefabs that I'm going to be using to build with at the start of the level and then slowly delete them as I'm building. That means that you won't be running into any issues where you're on 95,000 memory and you can't place a prefab because it has all of those unique props that you haven't been using before. If you spawn all the prefabs that you're going to use to build the level, then that technically means that you're only building the level with copies of those first objects, which means that the total cost of the level will be a lot lower when you're actually building it. You can then go ahead and remove these galleries and prefabs as you're building to help cut down and save the memory that you're using in your level. The next tip that I give you guys is to remove the trees and the rocks around the island. On the block island, we don't really have this issue, but if you're choosing something like the temperate island, there's actually 5,000 memory just taken up by the trees and the rocks that surround the island. If you delete those trees and rocks around the island, it will save you 5,000 memory, which is a lot of memory that you can be using to build your level with. I mentioned this tip in my video on how to become a better builder in Fortnite Creative, so if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend checking that out. The next tip that I can give you guys is to avoid using expensive props and devices. Really, there's no quick way to learn which props cost the most, but you can get a basic understanding for how much props cost or how much devices cost by spawning them into your island and seeing how much the memory bar goes up. As you saw earlier, that helicopter I would say is an expensive prop because just by spawning one of those helicopters in your level, you're increasing the amount of memory by 1,000. The next tip that I can give you guys is to scale up the props to cover a larger area. Scaling up a prop doesn't make it cost any more memory. So by scaling it up, you can cover a larger area of your world whilst using fewer props. This is a trick that we used on the World Run LTM for the roads. We ended up using color blocks for the roads and we scaled them up to the maximum size that they would go. That was to save on the number of blocks that we needed to cover up that section and to make the road. And they're all the secrets that I use to reduce the amount of memory that my builds take up. Make sure to share this video with your friends if it helped you out. By doing that, it really helps get this video seen and it'll help everyone in the creative community to understand how memory works. That being said guys, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.